Renee Rollins, along with Lisa Burkhart-Worley and Michelle Burden. We are glad you joined us for Pop Talk, the show where you never know what topics might pop up. Have you ever gone a little too fast on the highway, or maybe even got a ticket for speeding? But what if street racing on city streets is a way of life for you? Our guest today has some experience in this, but is now using it for righteous racing. Lisa has the introduction.
Thank you so much, Renee. Well, I have been guilty of going a little bit faster than the speed limit, but I'm a lot better now, thank heavens. However, have you ever experienced those people that weave in and out of the traffic and you think, they're going to cause an accident? Well, our guest today was that person at one time, but we like him anyway. But wait until you hear what he's doing now. His name is Aaron Schwartzbart. Aaron's a semi-retired, award-winning rocket scientist with degrees in physics and theology. He's a 5-time champion race car driver and an ordained minister. He's the founder of MotorGospel Ministries, an outreach that he will tell us more about in a minute. I met Aaron at the Content Media Conference, heard his story, and I knew that we needed to have him as a guest on Pop Talk. So welcome, Aaron. We've got to know you over the past couple of days. You're a very interesting fellow.
Thank you.
You've had a very interesting background. And so when we're talking about street racing with you, we're not talking about 10 miles over the speed limit. Can you talk about what you were like when you got behind the wheel at one time in your life?
Yes. I was born, I can say along with Lady Gaga, I was born that way. I came out the womb hardwired to turn into a Charles Manson or a Ted Bundy whenever I got a steering wheel in my hands. Criminally insane from the womb. Nobody taught me to be that way. It wasn't the product of anything that you could explain sociologically or psychologically. And I acted upon that. I did what came naturally to me. Dogs bark, cats meow, fish swim, birds fly. They just do what comes naturally to them. And they don't generally stop doing what comes naturally to them unless a miracle happens or something changes their very nature from the inside out. So for the first 30 years, my daily commute, this wasn't even the street racing. Street racing was in the middle of the night in an isolated area, relatively less dangerous, still dangerous and illegal, but relatively less dangerous. My daily commuting, not street racing, as a gainfully employed tax-paying rocket scientist, old enough to know better, but crazy as a loon, living proof that education and IQ and sanity are not all necessarily the same thing. There are some very educated, crazy people. 90 miles an hour on Canoga Avenue, that's a surface street, that's not a freeway. Canoga Avenue clogged, 35 mile an hour rush hour traffic, 5 days a week, 90 miles an hour in and out of 35 mile an hour commuters in the morning, doing their makeup and shaving and drinking their coffee or whatever. And I would slow down. If it was a left-hand intersection, I would slow down to 60 for the intersection and be right back up to 90. If it was a right-hander, 40 miles an hour from the right-hand lane to the right-hand lane of the right-hander. I had spent a lot of money and effort and time on a car that was capable of doing this kind of thing. And I did that 5 days a week. I wasn't even smart enough to hide it. It was the same car every morning, every night. They should have come looking for me. I should have been dead or in prison 100 times over, and I never ended up killing anybody. I never ended up killing myself.
That was my next question.
Right, yes. Almost certainly God...
And we know you didn't kill yourself.
Right, right. Almost certainly God had to be looking out for me. The probability... I thought I was good, but I wasn't that good. The probability that I should still be here with that kind of daily commute, that wasn't street racing.
We're laughing now because we know you don't do that anymore.
Right.
That had to be dangerous.
Yes.
So 2 questions. What was the appeal?
Yeah.
And did you ever worry about crashing, or did you know anyone who crashed or even died?
Yeah, right. So the appeal is hard to describe. When you're born a thoroughbred, you got to run. When you're born a shark, you got to devour things in a frenzied manner. So that's just, it's very gut level. There's not really a way to slice it and dice it very well. The best I can do at that I've tried over the years is, picture yourself to put you in my shoes. If you weren't born this way like I was, you're on the freeway. Somebody in front of you is doing 45 miles an hour, and you're late for an appointment. And you're a quarter mile from your exit, and the speed limit on the freeway is 70 miles an hour. How do you feel sitting behind that person at 45 miles an hour?
Frustrated.
That was me at anything less than 90 or 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's maybe you could sort of sense, put yourself in my shoes by imagining that scenario, that you're in that scenario. It doesn't really help you any to pass that person when the ramp is a quarter mile away, but that eternity of sitting behind them at 45 miles an hour, that was me at anything under 90 or 100.
Oh, and did you get help with your anger issues?
I felt a calmness beyond anything you can imagine when I was driving.
And yet I'd love to have had a microphone in the car of the people he was passing. Like hearing some of those comments.
Probably nothing that we could put on this show.
No, right. I pretty much heard it all. I had one guy chase me for 80 miles.
No
80
way.
Miles, wanting to, much bigger guy
80
than I.
miles.
Yeah.
That's a long way.
Being criminally insane and having a steering wheel doesn't necessarily mean you're the baddest person on the block. So a Norman Bates with a kitchen knife is dangerous, but he's no match for, this is a big dude, and he was.
Oh my goodness.
He was chasing
I would have
you
kept
down.
driving.
Yeah, right. I made him very angry.
Aaron, we
That's
gotta
passion
know.
to chase somebody for 80
Yes.
miles. Yeah.
We
Literally.
just want to know what turned it around. I mean, what caused you to give up street racing?
Right. So, long story short, we don't have 8 hours. Long story short, Christians laid hands on me and prayed for me as an atheistic, arrogant rocket scientist, and electricity went up and down my back, a physical manifestation,
Whoa.
not a feel-good kumbaya, not emotion, not sentiment, electricity, a physical manifestation that was unmistakable to an atheistic physicist. And I stopped being an atheist literally that night. I didn't become a Christian that night. I'm highly skeptical.
And an atheistic Jew.
Right, yes. I'm a Jew by blood, a Christian by faith, Jew by blood, very unashamed of my Jewish roots. I chant in Hebrew in our Sabbath services. I keep Sabbath. I light the candles. The candles are a quaint tradition. You don't get saved by quaint traditions, but I love my Jewish people. I love my Judaism. I'm still a Jew ethnically and by birth and by blood. Jewish, atheist, arrogant, rocket scientist, felt electricity go up and down his back at the hands of relatively less educated Christians that prayed for me. They didn't employ so-called apologetics. They didn't reason with me. They didn't thrust scriptures at me from the New Testament in which I didn't believe. They prayed and they trusted God. And I stopped being an atheist that night. It took several years of experiences like that before I surrendered to Christ, because I was a skeptic. I was not one to join a club just because of one experience or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. And then I entered the seminary. I put racing on the on the altar. Said I'm giving up the only thing that I'm really passionate about. I told the people in seminary, I don't know why I'm here, and they said, you will by the end of your experience here. I said, the only thing I've ever been passionate about is driving like a homicidal maniac. But I've read that book. The God of that book is not the God of hedonism. In the 60s, we said, if it feels good, do it. Sex and drugs and rock and roll and LSD and all that stuff. Now, the Christian version of hedonism is, if it feels good, it must be a call from God. And that's not necessarily true. John the Baptist, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Joseph, plenty of people had calls in their lives that didn't necessarily feel good. Right. So I did not buy that just because I loved racing, that meant I was supposed to race for Jesus. But by the end of the 8 years, long story, end of the 8 years of seminary, God confirmed in many ways He wanted me to drive fast in His name. And I believed He called me to put John 3:16 on the side of a race car and Jesus saves on the car. And mature Christians told me, don't do it. That will never work. That's too flagrant. You'll offend people at the track with your Christianity. Unbelievers told me, don't do it. You won't even get that car on the track with that dreaded name on that car. Wow. Everybody said no. And I listened to God instead of listening to man. 25 years later, 5 championships, CBS, ABC, NBC, Sky News, Spectrum One, Daily News, OC Register, Hip Hop Weekly, NASCAR News. Millions have seen the gospel on that John 3:16 car that have never heard a sermon from me because I listened to God instead of man.
Amen.
Aaron, I love this story. I went to race car driving school at one time in my life, only for a story. I wouldn't have done it on my own. But what kind of racing did you do that was legal? Yeah,
the legal racing, I started in NASCAR. I was in NASCAR from 90 through 95, big Chevrolets going in circles, good old boys, beer and barbecue. And then since 2001, it's been the John 3:16 car is a Porsche 914, a poor man's Porsche from the early 70s with a NASCAR motor in it. So
of course.
It made 75 horsepower when it rolled out of the showroom. Mine makes 440 of the wheels. It does 90 to 180 miles an hour in 13 seconds. That's all sports car racing. more of the wine and cheese crowd than the beer and barbecue crowd. But I still have American iron in my veins by virtue of the NASCAR motor and the
So you still like to race?
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm currently competing for yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm
You've
not
won some
retired.
championships.
5
haven't you?
championships.
Wow,
and-
that's
and
amazing.
Countless.
I know.
Should have had you come in your
That
race
is
car
so-
gear.
Right.
Yeah, like with your racing suit.
Right.
But you did surrender your life to Jesus Christ
Yes.
at one point, 8 years, I guess it was, and then you started. When did you start your ministry, MotorGospel?
I founded it in 2001.
Okay, and tell us all about that and what you do.
So, let's see. I compete in the John 3:16 race car throughout the Western United States. I do hospital visitation and grief counseling whenever drivers are hurt or killed. I preach at the tracks. I help people with a broad range of issues at the track that aren't necessarily related to racing.
Right.
People are there for racing, they're not there for church. But people that are there for racing, they have broken marriages, they have drug and alcohol addictions, they have terminal diseases. There's a broad range of involvements that I've had, funerals that I've preached at the tracks and weddings and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it crosses a lot of lines. I'm a driving instructor. I was voted by my peers driving instructor of the year for 2017. Besides spreading the anti-street racing message to millions worldwide with all kinds of media, I've hands-on coached over 100 drivers, all day long, getting to know each other with me in the passenger seat, terrified as the new driver is in the driver's seat.
I bet.
Some of my students have gone on to be champions and motorsports professionals and stuff. And then a special subset of those students are ordered by the court to come for community service with MotorGospel Ministries. We're in the humiliation business. Everybody swaggers in knowing how to drive, and we dispel that myth within 5 minutes. We put them in the seat, and they limp out very humbled with what we put them through at 150 to 200 miles an hour. And without one word, we don't have to say one word to them. They get it. Lots of success stories, so I'll just pick a few anecdotes. Angel Rodriguez, twice arrested for street racing, and he wasn't even arraigned yet. And a tough-as-nails cop called Sergeant Jesse Garcia, who is the leader of the most vigorous anti-street racing task force on the LAPD at the time. This is, 2017 or 18, something, 2016, I can't remember, a little while back. He called me up with Angel and Angel's mom crying in the police station, after her son spent the night in jail and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Saying, can you do something with this kid? People don't know the opportunities that exist to them. It's right in front of their faces, and it's right next door, and they don't know. We took him to the track. We arrived on a Friday night. There was a night endurance race going on, and what that means in our form of the sport is no lights are on the track. It's not like a lighted stadium. And these cars are blasting around 150 miles an hour in bumper-to-bumper traffic with headlights in the dark.
Oh my God!
And he saw that.
That would be scary.
And, yeah, if he was excited by street racing on the freeway, this was a whole other level, and he never street raced again. He's a successful businessman today. He totally turned his life around. Much longer stories than that, but that's exemplary.
What a great story. Well, and then, that is just so exciting when I hear you talking about that, because how God has used you with people who really have come to the end of their self, and literally God's using you to speak into their lives and build them back up in Christ. What a powerful ministry.
Thank you.
And then you have a film that you produced in 2023 called Driving Fast, Saving Lives since 2001. And it features a well-known actor, Dean Cain, and Kevin Sorbo's son, right?
Yes.
We want to talk about that. Can you tell us more about the film and the people and just where we can find it?
Right.
It's exciting.
Starring Dean Cain, Kevin Sorbo, Larry Wilcox, Rodney Allen Rippey, Isaac Hernandez, Joey Medina, Dwee Beck, a cast of bunches of cops, race car drivers, government officials, news media, anchor people.
You didn't call me.
Right. Next one, the sequel, right?
Right. There you go.
Yeah. It's basically the chronicle of MotorGospel Ministries, how I've spent the last 25 years of my life as a guy who should have been dead or in prison behind my pathological tendencies with the steering wheel, and instead I'm in partnership with the LAPD, saving lives with it. So we have lots of success stories, bunches of racing action, triple digit, racing action, red and blue lights, arresting people and all that good stuff. music, news media. It's monetized and it's free to the viewing audience to watch it. It's a beautiful thing to have a charitable situation where we're not asking for handouts, but for every free view of our wonderfully entertaining movie, we get a fraction of a penny into the 501c3 anti-street racing campaign that we operate for the
That's
AP.
awesome.
Monetized on Tubi TV and monetized on Stash TV, which is a channel of YouTube. Stash free documentaries. They make it available free to the viewing public, and yet we get from the advertisers, we get a fraction of a penny for every view. And it's on Taken TV. It's not monetized on Taken, but I would not dissuade anybody from watching it for free on Taken, even though we don't get anything from it.
We're on Taken.
Because are you good? Good. Because
Awesome.
Barry Alsobrook is just such a gift to the community, and he's so selfless. I can't say enough good about people watching it on Taken, even though it's not monetized on Taken.
Well, and in case you are curious about Aaron's film, here's a trailer from Driving Fast, Saving Lives Since 2001.
This is Aaron Schwartzbart, driver of MotorGospel Ministries John 3:16 race car, and I'm excited today to be here at Buttonwillow Raceway Park for MotorGospel Ministries anti-street racing outreach event. The mayor of La Mirada has a street racing problem, and Mayor John Lewis is demonstrating to his constituents that he's a man of action by coming here and driving at triple-digit speeds in bumper-to-bumper traffic to demonstrate to the people of La Mirada that there is a right time and a right place for motorsports.
We have local street racers from around the area. They come over and they take over our intersections and they race down our main street. It's a big public safety issue in our streets.
There is a right time and a right place for motorsports, and that is not in the streets of La Mirada. Young Angel Rodriguez was arrested for street racing about 3 months ago, and tonight he's going to be facing off against off-duty Sergeant Jesse Garcia, the officer in charge of LAPD Central Traffic Division Street Racing Task Force.
We're here to show the collaborated effort of getting guys off the street and onto the track.
It's an unprecedented thing for the courts to sentence an illegal street racer to come and race against a cop legally and safely here at Irwindale Drag Strip. This is Aaron Schwartzbart, driver of MotorGospel Ministries John 3:16 race car, and I'm excited today to be here at the Los Angeles Police Museum for MotorGospel Ministries 20th anniversary celebration.
It's Rodney Allen Rippey, and we are celebrating 20 strong years.
Thank you for 20 years of positively impacting so many different lives.
We really appreciate the 20 years at MotorGospel Ministries.
Thank you for all you're doing, Aaron, and God bless your team. The 20 years of great service in educating our youth, and more importantly, saving lives.
Aaron has helped individuals learn and respect the law and respect community values.
You're sitting out there at home right now thinking, oh man, I want to be a cool racer. That's a cool racer. Right. Help mop the floor with you as cool as you think you are. So if you think you want to try that, that's who you go talk to.
Aaron, wow, I can't wait to watch the film. It's incredible.
Thank you.
I mean, you've had an incredible journey, an incredible life, and
Yes.
still racing and
Yes.
still helping people. I love it.
Yeah.
And you've also, and on top of all that you do, you've written a book.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's called Street Racing 101, Why Motorsports Belongs at the Track.
Yes.
Well, that's exactly what you're preaching.
Yes,
And
yes.
so what all do you include in the book, and how have you used it?
Yeah, so I dispel every myth, every lie that is utilized by the little hoodlums, and I say that having been one of them. I'm not, not pointing a finger at them that I couldn't point at myself for 30 years. So having been there, I dispel every lie that they use to rationalize their dangerous, irresponsible behavior in 13 chapters from a 5-time champion race car driver, and it covers sponsorships. Guess what? You run over a little kid in a school zone, you ain't getting no multi-million-dollar sponsorship
No.
from Budweiser anytime soon. It ain't going to happen, right? So, sponsorships, the costs of racing legitimately versus racing illegally. These kids are spending $75,000 of mommy's and daddy's money often on street rods when they could be racing legally for $3,500 or something.
Wow.
You know,
That's huge.
Physics, the faster you go, the higher you go. If you're coming up to the crest of this hill above a certain speed, you're going to get air. Your tires are going to get very light, and then you're going to be off the ground. What happens if that crest of that hill is happening in the midst of a turn? Now you're flying into the oncoming lane. That's called conservation of energy or conservation of momentum. That's physics. Conservation of energy is a very well-proven theory. We might not call it a fact, but it is a theory that has never let us down since Isaac Newton. We use it to get people to the space station and back. We put William Shatner out there, 90 years old. We got him back.
And you were part of that.
I was part of that, yes. I was one of the rocket
Crazy.
scientists that put a 90-year-old William Shatner into space.
That is so cool.
And brought him back and landed him in the proper part of Texas where he was supposed to land because of how well supported that theory, conservation of energy or conservation of momentum, has been for 400 years. Well, that same theory says if you're going too fast around this turn, that little yellow sign that says it's a 35-mile-an-hour turn, and you know your Corvette can take it at 90, what you might not realize is that the engineers and the physicists that designed that road and chose that speed on that sign were not doing it because of the sharpness of the turn. They were doing it because of the elevation change. And you're going to get air, and you're going to be in the oncoming lane at the wrong time in the wrong place with a soccer mom with 11 kids in the AYSO little van, and you're going to plow head on and take out a whole family.
And so you have been in full-time ministry for over 10 years.
Yes.
Now, and can you share, maybe you shared an earlier story, but can you share some more success stories of your work with street racers?
Yeah, so let's see, we talked about Angel. J.W. Baxter was my protege for quite a few years, and we poured into his life. I met him, unemployed high school dropout, tremendously talented, more natural gifting for driving than I had. And I taught him everything I could in about 6 weeks. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It was longer than 6 weeks, but he was good enough that I couldn't teach him anything else very, very quickly. He rapidly surpassed my ability to teach, but I mentored him for about 8 years. I got him close to the major leagues. He ended up deciding he didn't want to go to the major leagues. I was very sad about that because I so wanted to have a major league champion. My 5 championships are all minor league amateur championships. He had the potential to be major league. To win in Indy or NASCAR if he wanted to. He decided not to, but he's happily married. He's walking with the Lord. He's a respected figure at the track as both an excellent driving instructor and an official with the National Autosport Association. So I think you would have to call that a success story, even though selfishly I really wanted to see him go the whole way. And
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, my gosh.
You know, I was just sitting here thinking, rocket scientist, racing champion, movie producer, author, and musician. And all these titles actually describe you, which is mind-blowing and so cool. I mean, what would you like to be accomplishing? Is there anything else in your life right now? We've talked a little off camera about this, Aaron, so share. What would you like
this is
to
controversial.
see the Lord do?
Controversial.
It's okay.
Right.
We can handle it,
If y'all aren't afraid of controversy.
No.
Secret Service agents and law enforcement officials, they had one job, and that was to keep a bullet out of Donald Trump's head.
Oh, wow.
They didn't have to think about making him lunch or shining his shoes. They had one job. And they watched. I saw the videos. I'm not making this up. It's objective fact. I've devoted 40 years of my life as a rocket scientist to a compare-contrast of facts, opinions, and allegations. My spreadsheet only has 3 columns. The entire universe has only 3 elements, the periodic table notwithstanding. Everything in the universe is either a fact, an opinion, or an allegation. I watched. It is objective fact. Dude took a minute and a half setting up with a rifle, pointing the rifle at Donald Trump's head. And everybody was watching him. Innocent bystanders. It's on video. They were saying, "Hey guys,
the guy over there,
right?
on the roof."
And maybe, Forrest Gump says, "I'm not a smart man." Well, I'm not a smart man. I'm just a dumb little rocket scientist. But while you might be able to convince me that you shouldn't use lethal force until the dude fired the first shot, And I'm not even sure if that's real. I'm not a cop, or I'm a volunteer
Right,
for the PD, but I'm not an actual cop. So I don't know. Maybe you could convince me it was merciful to not shoot until the guy fired the first shot. I want somebody to tell me. I'm looking in the camera right now at the audience. You tell me if you have an answer. I'm not smart enough to comprehend. Why didn't somebody tell him, duck, Mr. Trump?
Yeah.
They had a minute and a half to tell him to duck. If they didn't want to use lethal force on that shooter, with a minute and a half to think about it, this was not a blink of an eye. Racing, we have blink of an eye, life and death. This was not a blink of an eye. A minute and a half to contemplate it. And they had one job. How could that not be an inside job? Do you have any answer for why they didn't tell him to duck?
Okay, it is controversial.
If it wasn't an inside job, and I'm not biased toward conspiracy theories. I'm a realist.
Right.
I'm neither an optimist nor a pessimist. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, so don't get upset about politics or anything. I'm a physicist. And I ask you, can you give me a plausible explanation for why they didn't tell him to duck at least? Why they didn't surround him with their bodies or a shield or something with a minute and a half to think about it? That had to be an inside job. So I'm leaning toward, to answer your question, I'm leaning toward something that is more important than saving lives with street racing or writing books or making movies or shredding guitar at the Willie Nelson Museum or any of the stuff I love doing. I think maybe for the few years I have left, I need to join the Trump administration somehow and use my smarts to help him stay safe.
Well, it sounds like you've got a plan, Aaron. Well, all the best to you. We were so excited to interview you here on Pop Talk. Thank you for coming all the way from Los Angeles. And of course, as we tape this, the wildfires are still raging in Los Angeles, and our hearts go out to everyone there. I know it hasn't affected you guys yet, but we pray it doesn't. And we just pray for everybody in Los Angeles. In fact, the other day I was at an event and we were praying for rain.
Thank you,
for
Jesus.
LA. Yeah, let's just let it pour. Let it pour. And so what a great life you have, and we're going to be friends after this. We know that. We've had a great connection, and we're going to be here for you and to help you, and hopefully we can just collaborate again. So thanks, Aaron, for being here on Pop Talk. And if you want to contact Aaron Schwartzbart and find out more about him or the work he's doing, you can navigate to his website at MotorGospel.org. That's MotorGospel.org.
And we hope you will follow us on Pearls of Promise on social media. We're on Facebook at Pearls of Promise Ministries. We're present on Instagram at @pop_ministries. And we're on X at Pop Talk Media and at Pearls of Promise. Check out all of our award-winning documentaries and past Pop Talk shows on our YouTube channel at Pearls of Promise Ministries.
And thanks so much to our wonderful production studio, Grace Point Media, for all your media needs. Go to gracepoint.media. And we're also so grateful for our 26 television and radio platforms.
And that is Pop Talk for today. We're just ordinary girls
who God turned into pearls. Have a wonderful week.